Hello everybody and welcome back to what is most likely going to be the last crafting video for this build. In this video we are going to be going over how to craft your spell suppression rares, more specifically the spell suppression gloves and the spell suppression boots. So let's start off by looking at what modifiers are important on this item before we figure out how to craft them. So on this item you're going to see two things that I need to stress, and that is going to be the suffix modifier of nullification. Right, this is tier 1, chance to suppress spell damage, and the other modifier is suffix modifier of puharte, and this gives you cold resistance and increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. Right, this is an incursion specific modifier. It cannot be crafted using normal crafting means. You can only find that mod on incursion items related to Alva. Alright, so how we make this item is by using Recombinators, and I'm going to go over that method later on in the video. The other modifiers on this item is going to be just useful things for our build. So you can see here I put some life, some mana, and then increased damage during any flask effect. Okay, and of course we can talk about the Eldritch Implicits later. Those are important as well. But the two modifiers that are really a pain to get for this item is the spell suppression combined with the suffix modifier of puharte, which I'll be calling incursion modifier from now on, okay? For our boots, this one's a lot more simpler. So we have a fractured chance to suppress spell damage. So you need to buy this from someone or create it yourself using a fracturing orb. I recommend buying the base from someone. And the other important modifier here is the chance to avoid ailments suffix, okay? This one we get through the essence, and the essence we use is Essence of Loathing. So let me see if I can pull that up on my stash over here. A deafening Essence of Loathing. You'll see here that when it is used on your boots, you will get a chance to avoid elemental ailments. Alright, so that is the two of the most important modifiers on the boots. And then the other things I have here are just general things that are good for almost every build. We have move speed, we have some mana in this case, and then we also have a resistance modifier. Alright, so that is the boots and the gloves that I have prepared for my build. You can see that I don't have them equipped yet, and that's because I haven't fully transitioned into spell suppression, right? I'm still working on it myself. We have no currency left, so I need to save up for my mage blood, and then I need to make a ring, but I do have these items ready to use. Alright, so I'm going to put these away in my bank, somewhere safe where I won't accidentally vol it or something. Like I've said, I've been known to do stupid things. And then we're going to get right into the crafting process for these items. Alright, once you have acquired your boots, I paid 6 divines for this one, you're going to start spamming Deafening Essence of Loathing. Alright, so you're going to have a guaranteed fractured spell suppression modifier, and you're going to have a guaranteed chance to avoid elemental ailments modifier from the essence. Our third modifier we're looking for is going to be a high tier resistance. Right, this depends on what your build is missing. If you are missing Chaos Resist, then look for Chaos Resist, and if you're missing Elemental Resist, then get an Elemental Resist one instead. The fun thing about Elemental Resist is that it doesn't matter which one you get, only the tier matters, and that's because we can use the Horde Crafting Station to change one Elemental Resist to another. So you'll see here that this pair of boots has Lightning Resist on it, and my build needs Fire Resist, so I use the Horde Crafting Station, and we change Lightning to Fire. Our next step is to look at the prefixes on these boots. If it's a good one, like movement speed, or life, or mana, then you might consider keeping it, bench crafting something useful, and calling it a day. If you have trash prefixes like I do, we don't need evasion modifiers on the boots for this build, then you're going to want to clean the boots of its prefixes. There are two methods of doing this, guys, and I'm going to show you one on screen now. This is by using the meta mod suffixes cannot be changed. The mod itself is a prefix, and it protects all of your suffixes. Okay, so if you have room to do this, you can use either the Benchcraft or the Wild Bristle Matron Beastcrafting method to get the suffixes cannot be changed modifier onto your item, and then you're going to scour it, and then you're going to have just your suffixes left. Right, if you have bad luck and you have a full item with 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes, what you're going to do instead is remove the prefixes using the Eldritch Orb of Annulment. So to do this, we need to make sure that the Searing Exarch is dominant. Alright, if you remember your Eldritch currencies, it has tiers like Lesser, Greater, Grand, Exceptional. Alright, dominant means that one is higher than the other. So you're going to want to use something like a Greater Eldritch Ember You're going to want to put that on your boots, and then you're going to want to use a lesser Eldritch Ichor, and you're going to want to put that on the boots, and this guarantees that the Searing Exarch is dominant, and then you're going to use a bunch of Eldritch Orb of Annulments until all the prefixes are gone. Irregardless of how you get here, this is where you want to be. You want to be in a situation where you just have a pair of boots with the suffixes that are good for your build. So in this case, Spell Suppression, chance to avoid elemental ailments, and a high tier resist. Alright, our next step here is to use the Veiled Orb. Alright, so you're going to go ahead and get the meta mod suffixes cannot be changed. Alright, and I know this is going to sound confusing, but this mod is a prefix that protects your suffixes, okay? So you're going to put suffixes cannot be changed, and then you're going to use a Veiled Orb. Now, normally, a Veiled Orb is going to remove a random mod and add a random mod. Since our suffixes are full, we cannot add a random mod, we can only add a prefix. And since our suffixes are being protected, we cannot remove a random mod, we can only remove a prefix. Okay, so you're going to remove the prefix that's protecting your suffixes, and you're going to add a veiled prefix using the Veiled Orb. And you'll have something that looks a little like this. Right, now, before we unveil, we want to weight the odds in our favor of getting a good outcome. So you're going to block off increased evasion while focused. Okay, if you craft this on your bench craft, there is no chance of it appearing when you unveil. So that is what I do here. Then we unveil it, and we see what options we get. Alright, things that are good for this build is going to be move speed, onslaught, mana, or life. Okay, so you're going to pick whatever you think you need the most, and then you're going to bench craft the one you didn't get. So in this case, I got maximum mana on my unveil, and then I take it to the crafting bench, and I put move speed and chance to get onslaught on kill, and then the modifiers on the boots is complete. At this stage, the last thing we're going to do is fix the Eldritch Implicits. You're going to use the Greater Eldritch to get chance to avoid elemental ailments, and then you're going to use the Lesser Eldritch to get 4% action speed. And once you have that done, our boots are complete. Very nice. Alright, we are now talking about the gloves and how to craft them. We are using Recombination, so I'm once again showing this to you in a paint application. We will go into the actual game and show you actual clips once I have this part explained. So for those of you that missed the previous video, Recombination works a little like this. You take one item, this is ingredient number 1, you put this here. You take a second item, ingredient number 2, and then you put this here. Then when you press Recombine, you're going to get a third item that has a chance to have modifiers from item 1 and item 2. Alright, best case scenario is you get all the modifiers kind of like squished into one. That is best case. But as I will show you later, things can go wrong and you might not get what you are hoping for. So let's go ahead and remove this. With that said, let's look at item number 1. So let me pull this up over here. This is your Suppression gloves. So this needs to be a magic base, and the spell Suppression is a suffix that needs to be isolated on its own. You're going to roll this using Orb of Alterations, and the important things to know here is that your item needs, one second, eye level 85, okay? You need an eye level 85 item. And the item also needs to be of Dex requirement. So it can be Dex Int hybrid, it can be Dex Strength hybrid, or it can be pure Dex like I have here. The reason for this is the Spell Suppression mod only rolls on items that have a Dex requirement, and the highest tier of the Spell Suppression mod only rolls on eye level 85 or higher items. So that is why we need eye level 85 and Dex requirement. Okay, the evasion rating you get from your item doesn't really matter, this thing over here. It's really up to you. I picked Valor Gloves because I have the Dex requirement to use it. If you are struggling on Dex, consider using a lower base or a hybrid base instead. Alright, so let's call this gloves number 1, gloves number 1. And then I'm going to pull up gloves number 2. So this is over here. This is the mitts or gloves of Puharte. So this is the incursion modifier that I talked about at the beginning of the video. And it's going to need to be isolated onto a pair of magic gloves. Once again, you will see that this looks like it's 2 mods, but it's actually 1 modifier. This is the incursion modifier of Puharte. It's going to give you cold resist, and it's going to give you increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. The important thing for these gloves is, once again, you need it to have a Dex requirement. You're going to be buying this item in some shape or form from another player, so when you're buying it, make sure you buy a Dex or Dex hybrid base. The item level for this doesn't matter, since we're using Recombinators. I'm going to show you later how to isolate this incursion modifier on a pair of magic gloves, but for now, All you need to know is that this is our ingredients or our input going in, right? So we got gloves number 1, gloves number 2, and then I'm going to show you what the outcome looks like on these gloves. So just for, sake of completion, this is gloves number 2, okay? So have a good look at gloves number 1 and 2. These are our ingredients, and then I'm going to swap over to my other canvas. Hey, we're going to start with the failure cases because it's important to know that things can go wrong and that you can fail, alright? This isn't a guaranteed method, so if you don't have a lot of currency, save that money and go buy an upgrade instead. Don't waste it on gamba crafting. You might just, end up very sad. So let's look at failure case number 1. This is gloves number 1, that's our spell suppression gloves. This is gloves number 2, that's our incursion gloves. We're going to recombinate both of these. And, things kind of go bad, it doesn't work out. We get back one of the items we put in. So in this case, our output is gloves number 2, and this modifier has gone here, and I would call this a failure state, okay? So fail. This is bad, all right? If this happens, you're going to have to re-roll one of these items, and then you're going to have to try the recipe again and hope you have better luck. So let's look at the next fail state. Okay, so this is fail state number 2, and this is what I would call a catastrophic failure. So I'm going to put in gloves 1, and I'm going to combine it with gloves 2, and then we get gloves 1 back. So we get our spell suppression mod over here, and this is something I would call a catastrophic fail. So you're going to write fail in all caps over here, and I'll put a little unfrowny face. The reason for this is isolating the incursion mod on a blue item or a magic item is quite a expensive process. So we need to buy the item from someone, and then we need to clear all of the other affixes on it and isolate it so it's just a magic item with the incursion modifier, okay? So getting this is quite tough compared to getting suppression mod on your gloves. So if you end up in a case where you lose the incursion modifier, this is a catastrophic failure. You're going to have to basically start the whole process from scratch. Yeah, hopefully you have better luck than ending up in this situation. All right, and then we'll wrap it up with a success state. So this is when you put in gloves number 1 and gloves number 2. Okay, and you're going to get something like this. This is a rare item. We'll call it gloves number 3, but it's actually our finished product. And this is what I would call a success. We are getting both modifiers from our input items squeezed into a rare item in the output. Okay, you can put a little happy face here. This is what you want. And once you have this, it should be smooth sailing from here. All right, guys, so here's an example of how we are going to isolate the incursion modifier on its own. So this is the item I bought from someone on trade. It cost me 100 chaos, and let's go over and make sure it meets the requirements that I just talked about. So first of all, it needs to be a dex base. So here we have dex int hybrid, so that is perfectly fine. And then the next thing you're looking for is that it needs to have the incursion modifier. So I don't know why this looks so complicated on the tooltip, but this is the incursion modifier that I am highlighting in yellow, okay? So it is the cold resistance and the increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. That is one modifier, that is one suffix, and it is giving us 2 stats. All right, and then everything in red over here that I'm going to highlight, these are the mods that need to go. So we have a bunch of different mods there, and these modifiers in red needs to be removed. So how are we going to isolate the incursion modifier? We're going to do this by clearing the prefixes with Eldritch Orb of Annulment. So here you will see that I have a greater ember. Okay, so this is greater. And then you'll see that I have a lesser ichor. So this is lesser. All right. If we use both of these items on our gloves, we're going to get a case where the Searing Exarch is dominant. So our red influence is going to be dominant. And then when we use the Eldritch Orb of Annulment, it's going to target annul all the prefixes on this item. All right. So if we did that, we're going to get rid of the fire damage to attacks, we're going to get rid of increased evasion and energy shield, and we're going to get rid of maximum mana. So the only 2 things that we should be left with is our incursion modifier in yellow over here. And this one over here, this lightning resist, will also have that as the suffix on the item. Okay, so if you did everything correctly, you will have just the suffixes here like I have shown you. And the other method of doing this, we talked about while we were making the boots, is by using suffixes cannot be changed, and then use a scouring orb to get rid of the prefixes, alright? and that is another alternative method of clearing the prefixes on your rare. Right, now we have a 2 suffix rare item, so let me just go ahead and put this. Cold resist and increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. That's suffix number 1. That's our incursion suffix. And then we have suffix number 2, which is lightning resistance. Okay, so this is suffix number 2. How are we going to get this into a magic item? Well, I'm glad you asked, and now we can go back into game so I can show you how this is done. Alright, so once you have the rare with just the incursion modifier and another suffix on it, so a 2 suffix rare, you're going to go on trade and buy the Phenomal Plagued Arachnid. This is a beast that we're going to use in the menagerie to split the item in 2. Alright, when you split an item, it's going to produce 2 copies of the item with half of the mods on each item. Since we only have 2 mods on our item that we're putting in, our output is going to be 2 different items. One is going to have our incursion modifier, and the other is going to have the lightning resistance modifier. Alright, don't worry about the split tag. The split tag just means that the item cannot be further split. So you can't take a split item and then you split it again, alright? That would be kind of game breaking. You just have infinite dupes. So that is how the split modifier and Phenomal Plagued Arachnid works. Alright, from here we can now use the Recombinator with the Spell Suppression gloves and the Incursion gloves to get both of them on a rare item. And now we can finish up the craft with Veiled Orb as well as the Bench Crafting modifier. Alright, this step is very similar to what we did with the boots. You're going to craft suffixes cannot be changed, and then you are going to use a Veiled Orb, which is going to remove the prefix, and it's going to add either a veiled suffix or a veiled prefix, which then we can unveil. If you want to guarantee that you get a veiled prefix, you can put a multi-mod before you put suffixes cannot be changed. This is going to fill up your gloves with 3 suffixes, so you cannot get a veiled suffix. Instead, you are forced into a veiled prefix. And just like last time, we are going to benchcraft increased evasion while focused to prevent that from appearing when we unveil. And then we are going to unveil and hope for a useful stat like life or mana. Now, if you get a bad unveil and have the money, you can clear the suffixes and try this again. Otherwise, you can just kind of roll with it, right? Just you get what you get and you make the best of it. Hey, there's no straight answer to what you should unveil. If your character feels a little bit squishy, you might want life. And sometimes you might just not get a lot of good options. You're just going to pick the best one that's there for you. Right, this is something I'm going to leave up to you guys, and then you're going to wrap up the craft by using the crafting bench to fill in the modifiers that you are missing. So in this case, I put a multi-mod, and then I put maximum mana with the benchcraft and increased damage during flask with the benchcraft. And then the last thing we will do is our Eldritch Implicits. If you are on a budget, use the Grand Eldritch Ichor to roll Spell Suppression, and the Lesser Eldritch Ember to roll Chance to Unnerve, and then your craft is done. If you have a lot more money to work with, you can try improving the Eldritch Implicits using Orb of Conflict. In this case, you're going to use a Grand Eldritch Ichor to get Spell Suppression. Then you're going to buy an exceptional Eldritch Ember to get an exceptional Searing Exarch trait. Then you're going to use the Orb of Conflict and hope that your Suppression upgrades up 1 tier. Right, so I tried this a few times, I failed, and eventually I did get it. And then your gloves is complete. And that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching it, or at least found the breakdown relatively easy to follow along. Alright, remember that I myself am not the best player, I am not a crafter, and a lot of times I am figuring things out as I go and just kind of showcasing to you what I find in these videos. With every passing day, we are getting closer and closer to the release of Path of Exile 2. Alright, and I am excited to play, but holidays are also coming up, so I will be spending some time with friends and family. And with respect to this build, we have basically talked over every item, alright, including how to craft the wand, the gloves, the boots. Alright, the only item we haven't really talked about is the ring. That one's not really tough, you're just gonna buy something from trade that is missing the stats that you need. So you need Chaos Resist, you gotta Amethyst ring with Chaos Resist. Hey, if you're short on dex, you might want to look at getting a ring with Dexterity on it. Hey, that one I can entirely leave up to you. It's not a big brain or difficult crafting process. Right, the last item we need for this build before I can full swap to Spell Suppression and finish the build is the Mage Blood. Alright, and as you know, I've spent most of my money on crafting projects, so I don't have a lot of currency to get the Mage Blood, so expect one last update video for this build to finish things up. near the end of December or early into next year. All right, if you guys are still playing, if you're still watching, I will finish this build and I will show you what this looks like in a pretty optimized endgame setup. I know it's a bit early, but happy holidays. Thank you guys so much for watching. Right, whether it's this video or some of the other ones I have on this channel, a lot of you guys drop by, you leave comments, you ask questions, and you engage with me, not only as a player, but as a person, and I appreciate you. So, thank you once again, and I will see you guys soon, but not too soon, with a new video.